YouTube, what's going on? Welcome back to another Advanced MX5 track guide. It's 2021, Season 2, week number 6. We're at Nurburgring GP. What can you say about this track other than it's incredible, it's technical, it's iconic, it's amazing. Let's dive right in. So as you can see here, the track conditions, ambient temperature of 18 degrees C, and track is 19 degrees C, so again, very cold. Moderate usage, 50% on the track conditions. Once more, this is a VRS test session that I'm using. We take a look at the setup, fairly standard stuff. Nothing unusual, I'd say. Maybe I've gone softer on the bump and rebound than normal. Definitely softer on the rear bump. But other than that, it's still very basic stuff. What I might do actually is bump that baby up. Of course, quickly. And if you're looking to download the setup, just jump in the Discord. Link in the description down below. Let's just do a little track walk and see what we can figure out here. So coming out the pits, we're immediately faced with turn number 1, a very, very tight hairpin where you go on 3 wheels quite a lot of the time. If we just take a look, very tight, and you've got a mixture of lines on exit because you get thrown into turn number 2. This section, again, a very, very difficult, tricky, off-camber left-hander. Don't want to use too much of the runoff there on exit. And then we've got a left-right, which, again, very tight and technical. This first section is an absolute monster to get right. I feel like no matter how many laps I do through there, I never get it right. Now we have a downhill left, which can be taken a number of ways. You can take it quite quickly and end up coming out on the very extreme right of the track, which then narrows the entry to this downhill right, which isn't a great racing line. But in a race, it's not too bad. If you're defending a position, if you're going for a move, it works out quite nicely. Now into the hairpin at the bottom of the hill, or what I think is a hairpin. Again, there's probably about 10 different lines through that hairpin. You can go deeper, cut back on yourself, you can take it tight, try and maintain exit speed, or maintain your speed through the corner. As we go through the Schumacher S's, which is just nice and flat in this car. No problem whatsoever. We're in 4th gear, heading up the hill into another tricky left-right. Braking by the 100 board. You really, really abuse absolutely every bit of the Astro here. And then this very awkward right-hander, which is sort of falling away from you at first. I don't think, again, I'll ever get that right. I've been trying to learn how to do that for about 10 years. It's just impossible. And now the chicane we have here is the nice open, quick chicane. I'm leaving it in 4th gear here because I'm not drafting anyone. And we just take it nice and easy. We don't want to cut too much because it's very easy to get a 1x through there. And then the very awkward last turn in 3rd gear. So now let's try and figure out what we're doing for turn number 1. Again, there's multiple different ways you can approach turn 1. I like to approach it, if we can just get rid of that, sorry, at this angle. You can line up on the extreme left and follow the track inwards, sort of reduces the angle of the corner. It doesn't make too much of a difference to me. As we just go through turn number 2, little lift there is all you need. Ran a little bit wide, that is what you need to be careful of. Slamming it down to 2nd gear, taking this left-hander nice and tight initially, to then open up the right-hander, taking it nice and flat, and using absolutely every inch of the runoff that we can. Now let's try and take a little bit of a different line. Let's slow down a bit more. Try and come out in the middle of the track, which I believe is the quickest way to do this in the MX5. Get you a nice compromise between taking the first corner, the left-hander quick, and then the right-hander quick. And then just down the hill. Braking hard, diving into the corner, getting on the power as early as you can. So the most important thing is to get on the power early and try and keep it smooth. Don't really want to break traction too much, just because you're going all the way up this hill. So if you can carry 1 km/h more than your opposition, the person you're racing against, you're going to be in good stead by the time you get to the braking point here, the 100 board, remember. Just carrying your speed through the corner, nothing too fancy, and then trying to set yourself up for the awkward right-hander. Obviously, I think what makes that corner so difficult, the right-hander there, is that if you nail the corner beforehand, you're going to be approaching it differently than if you just about take the corner well. You know, it's just constantly changing and adapting. I think that's what makes this track so good, to be honest. It's a proper racetrack, in my opinion. And the last turn is just all about getting as close to the pit wall as you dare. Definitely got a 1x there as well, didn't I? Lovely stuff. So, what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to run this forwards to when I've got a rapido time, hopefully, and then we'll break it down in more detail. Catch you in a bit. Alright, so here we are. As you can see, it's taken me an additional 10, 9 laps to set a time. You may be able to see that I've set a 2:15.576 on lap number 7. That was invalid, went off the track, so carried on, didn't count it. I managed to get a 15.592 just a few laps later. Quite pleased with the lap, or quite pleased with the time, not particularly pleased with the lap, but let's just walk through it and see exactly what we can figure out. So, going into turn number 1, we're just going to be cruising up, taking a nice straight line towards our braking point, which is the 100 board. It's this curb on the left. I personally use the curb on the left. You brake exactly at the start of it, and I leave it in 4th gear coming into this corner. In a race, if I'm drafting someone, I'll probably shift to 5th, brake a little bit earlier, but that's just something I'll adjust on the fly. So, as I say, braking where this curbing starts, as you can see, braking very hard all the way down to 2nd gear, sticking to the left-hand side of the track for quite some time. Just into 2nd gear now, and then that's, you know, as per normal in the MX5, when you hit 2nd gear, that's your signal to begin to trail brake. So begin bleeding off the brakes and begin to turn that wheel. Just really crank the wheel into this first turn, as it's a very sharp right-hander. As you can see as we go through it, we're looking to just clip this little barrier just here, this little cone, sorry, just here. I believe if you do actually drive over it, it's counted as an off-track, and also you might get a slowdown penalty, but you just want to get really, really close to that. And if you look at the steering wheel, I've really cranked on the steering wheel. That's probably the most I've ever really turned the steering wheel on the MX5. And as you can see, before I'm actually hitting this curb, hitting this this cone, I'm already getting back on the power. That's the key to this turn. Try and use the elevation change to unsettle the car, to get the back end kicking out a little bit, help you with the rotation. Use all these things together to make you increase your slip angle and get around the corner faster. And if we just continue to play this through, full power, just getting the car over to the right-hand side of the track, trying to line ourselves up for turn number 2 on the very right-hand side of the track. So if we watch that back in full speed, braking at the 100 board, down to 2nd, then we begin to turn, power, 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 and it's as simple as that, up to 3rd gear. And we're into turn number 2. I'll be honest with you, I don't take this very good on this lap, but if you just see there, it's just simple, turn in, lift to get the weight on the front of your car to help your car stick to the inside, then when your car's lined up, put the power back on. It's that simple, really. We watch it in super slow-mo, turning, full power, remaining full power, heading towards the curb on the inside, and then as I notice that we are starting to understeer wide, we lift. That then puts the weight on the nose, we begin to turn more, and then we put the power on, and then we're still cranking on the wheel, because if we run out onto this AstroTurf, that's a 1x, that's all that done for. You can straddle the curb as I do here, just not much more. And I'm going to leave it playing in slow-mo here, going into the next turn. This is very, very, very tricky. A late apex, very tight 2nd gear, left-hander, into a right-hander. So essentially you want to get your car lined up on the left-hand side for the exit of this corner as well, which means you apex even later. As you're changing down into 2nd gear as well, quite quickly for this corner, you're going to be turning at the same time. It's going to unsettle the back end of the car, so you need to be prepared to catch the back end as well. It's just all sorts going on in this corner, and it's what makes this first section so difficult. So if we just back it up just a bit here, as for a braking point for the turn, I don't really have one. It's more of a timing thing because you're apexing so late. It's a lot of trail braking. You can hold onto the brakes that bit longer, so I prefer to just brake quite early. I suppose looking at it back now, potentially the end of this Astro just here could be used. However, for me, it's just more of a timing thing. When my car naturally drifts to the left, it stops straddling the curb here. That's when I begin to brake. So we just play it in slow motion. We come off the curb, we begin to brake, drop it down to second gear, and we're just gently on the brakes, trying to get the car hooked up to this curb. And if we pause it here, you can use this part, the top of the curb, what would be grass, but it's worn away, it's concrete, you can use that. And then you need to get on the power early as well. So late apex, keep the car to the left on exit, and get on the power early. It's just, those three things don't work well together, so it's very hard to make it happen. As you can see, we managed to get on the power as we are on the curb, and then this brings us out nicely, reasonably central, reasonably to the left hand side of the track. We're going to be shifting up to third gear as we turn into the right hander. You straddle this curb and then just try and keep it smooth. On this lap, the back end does get a bit happy, and as you can see, I'm correcting the car, just clipping the green stuff there and then trying to avoid this green stuff here, as both of those things will get you a 1x if you use too much of them. We just play it back full speed. Things to bear in mind: early on the brakes for the left-hander, trail brake a lot, keep the car tight, get on the power early, and line yourself up for the right-hander, which you're going to be shifting up to third gear for as you're transitioning from the left to the right. So braking hard initially, then trail braking, power, keeping it nice and tight, shift to third, straddle the curb, try to keep it smooth, and watch the runoff on exit, and you manage to get away with it. And then we're headed into another combination corner, left-right. This time, both downhill. The left-hander, as I said previously, there's several ways to take this. You can carry more speed in, go deep, which would then compromise the right-hander, but because it's a downhill right-hander, it doesn't compromise you as much as it normally would. Or you can take this tighter to try and really nail the right-hander, or you take it somewhere in the middle. For me, the fastest way to do it is to do it in the middle, in between. It gives you the best of both worlds. So we're lining up on the very right-hand side of the track. If we roll it forward, as you can see, I'm going to dip 2 wheels just into this dirt here. Literally just clipping the dirt. Any more, you're going to get a 1x. So you're really dancing with the devil there if you're on a hot lap. You need to be very careful. And this is our signal to brake. As soon as we touch this dirt, we're going to brake very gently, or quite gently, sorry. We're going to drop it down to third gear and just dive into this curb. And it's that simple, really. There's not much more you need to do. As you can see, look at the braking. The most I'm braking there is 45%, I'd say. We're down into third gear. Trail braking, we're touching the curb. Not ideal, but we get away with it. And then we're on the power. And as you can see, we exit in the centre of the track. Now, braking pointer for this downhill right-hander, you've got where this curb ends and you've got where this curb begins. It's somewhere in this zone. It changes every time depending on whether you're on the right-hand side or you're on the left-hand side. If you're on the left, the outside, you're going to brake later. If you're on the right or the inside, you're going to brake earlier. Just this zone, as we're in the middle, we sort of brake in the middle of it, nice and simple. Keeping the car in third gear, braking reasonably hard at first, and then beginning to trail brake, and most importantly, we actually coast in this corner. As you can see, I'm hooking the car up with the inside curb, and if you just notice there, we coast for a good few frames, still coasting here, and I'm getting ready to put the power on already. It seems quite early, but because we're in third gear, the power, we're going to be relying on torque more than horsepower, something that the MX5 doesn't really have either of anyway, but it's got less torque. So the power's not going to kick in as fast. It's going to be a lot smoother. We're going to be able to transition through the corner nicely because it's downhill. The car's going to rotate more. All these things are working in our favour. And as you can see, I'm really cranking on the steering wheel as well. But full power, nice and easy, and we're using all of the runoff on exit. No problem at all. All this green stuff is lovely. And then we're headed down into the turn at the bottom of the hill. If we just play this section back at full speed, braking as we dip the two wheels in the grass, down to third gear, keeping it nice and tight on the power, keeping the car central, braking in between those two curbs, and then just keeping it tight on that downhill right-hander and getting on the power nice and early. Then we're up to fourth gear here, lining our car up on the left-hand side of the track. I'm just going to hold it here. You can use this concrete. You can even drive over this grass, which I believe I do on this lap. This just sort of opens up the turn even more, gives you a further 2 or 3 lines that you can take. As I mentioned previously, there's so many different ways to take this corner. You can really dive into it. You can try and line up for the exit. On this lap, I believe I take more of a setup, so I try and line my car up for the exit. I do lose a little bit of time on entry because of this. I gain some of it back, but not all of it. So not ideal, this one. You maybe want to dive into the corner a little bit more than this. But if we play it through, using this runoff, and if we just run it back here, see the way this white line curves off to the left. As my car's approaching where it curves to the left, that's when I start to brake. That's my braking marker. Again, it's not precise, it's not ideal, it's not definite, but it works for me. And if you look in the bottom left here, as we play it through, I actually begin to start braking a little bit before, but look just how hard we brake. Very, very hard. Down to third, down to second, then we begin to bleed off the brakes and turn and coast in this corner. Again, we coast in this turn. On the power as early as you dare. If you get on it too early, you'll end up understeering wide, but it's a nice cambered corner. It works in your favour. You're shifting up to third gear as you're exiting the corner. So again, there's a lot going on, and you can use this green stuff as runoff. If we just watch that back, just things to bear in mind is the braking point where the white line veers to the left, and just remember to coast in the middle of the corner just a little bit to get that rotation, and stand on the power as soon as you possibly can, because we're taking this speed all the way uphill through the Schumacher S. So braking very hard, down to third, down to second, beginning to turn, coasting, power, 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 using that camber in our favour. We're up to third gear, heading up towards the Schumacher S. We're going to be shifting to fourth gear before the Schumacher S. I like to use the curb on the outside to set up, just to open up the corner just that little bit more. If you get it right, you can keep the car just as smooth, but you know, it's more of a straight line, so you can generate just a little bit more speed. We're literally talking hundredths or thousandths of a second that we're saving by doing this. So if you don't use it, it's not too bad. We shift up to fourth on the curb, just keeping it nice and smooth. A little glance to the curb, not ideal, but again, it works out. And then there's not really too much to say in the MX5 through that corner. You know, it's an iconic Schumacher. You know, the Schumacher S is very iconic, but it's very, very easy. Nothing too much to say as we head into another difficult left-right combination. We're in fourth gear. The 100-meter board is our braking point. You can use just a tiny bit of this AstroTurf on our right here. Too much, you'll get a 1x. Literally just touching it is all you can really get away with. As you do touch it, that's when you brake. You're shifting down to third gear. You're braking hard initially, then trail braking and diving into the left-hander. You can carry a lot more speed through here than you might think, and you do use the green Astro on top of the curb, so you straddle that curb on the inside. So as we see, just braking hard, down to third gear, stab at the brakes, and then we come off. Really attack the curb and then get on the power. Just be careful you don't understeer too wide on exit, as it's going to ruin your entry to the right-hander. As you can see, I just about clipped the curb, so I'm pretty pleased with that. Now for a very, very awkward turn, this downhill right-hander. There's no real sort of marking or indication as to where you turn. It's just more of a practice thing. You know, you're coming from a left-hander, you're on the extreme right-hand side of the track. You need to get your car over to the left-hand side of the track as soon as possible. So as soon as your car's pointed in that direction and you're about to touch the edge of the track, that's when you start to turn right. That's when you lift, you coast in the MX5 with this setup. You don't need to brake. If you brake, you're going to lose too much time, and you sort of want to delay your turning. So if we just watch it here, I begin to lift quite slowly. And as you can see, I'm turning, I'm sort of not committing, and then I do finally commit, and then we go full power. As you can see on this lap, I do actually clip the grass on the inside, so it's not ideal. There's still more time in that corner. As I say, it's very, very difficult. I'm yet to master it after all these years, but it's something that you can always improve on. So I'd say always practice these two corners, because they work in tandem together. You get the first one better, you're going to have to compensate on the second one, things like that. So let's watch it back at full speed. Remember, braking at the 100 board, braking very sharply at first, down to third gear, trail braking and attacking the curb on the inside and getting on the power early, and then just throw the car over to the left-hand side of the track, then begin to turn for the right-hander, lift, and then just get on the power as soon as you dare. Be careful not to understeer too far wide, as you will end up in the kitty litter. Now I'm leaving it in fourth on this flat out section here. In a race I would be shifting to fifth. As I say, we're in fourth. You only go 184 kilometers an hour. Fourth gear can go up to 185 kilometers an hour in the MX5, so nothing to worry about. We just roll it forward. The 50 board is where we're going to brake, or what I like to use is where the grid sort of glitches in, or jumps in. It's exactly where the 50 board is, so it doesn't really matter what you use, just whatever your preference is. And for the braking for this turn, it's something that changes every lap for me. My initial stab at the brake was quite firm, if we see there, probably about 60-70%. And what happens when I do that is the car begins to turn, and begins to turn too much. So I come off the brakes, a little bit of counter steer. What we're trying to avoid is touching this curb here, because if we do, it's going to invalidate our lap, and we really don't want to do that. Roll it forward again. I begin to just trail brake a bit, and we just clip the curb. We're full power then from this moment on. So I actually touched the curb more than I realised at the time of running the lap. We go to the chase cam. Let's just see exactly what happens. So we just glance the red and white. So obviously, if you go on top of that, that's when you start running into problems. So as I say, I'm quite surprised that I did get away with that in the end. We run it through, slow motion again, just paying attention to the brakes, holding on to them just a bit before we get really aggressive on the throttle. And then we need to be careful here as well. If you take too much of this Astro, you're going to invalidate your lap as well. I can't really say much else other than you need to practice this, get a feel for it yourself. Often there's occasions when I will go half throttle on this right-hander. This is to try and preserve traction, to try and keep the car stable so I don't oversteer or four-wheel drift out wide on the exit. But again, that's just a feel thing, and it's just all practice, things that you get used to. So if we just play it back at full speed, we're going to remember to brake at the 50 board, braking hard initially, trying to avoid the big curb on the inside of the left-hander, and getting on the power nice and early. That's the key to this corner. Lovely stuff, lovely stuff. And as you can see, it spits us out on top of this curb, which is perfect to set us up for the last corner. Now, my braking point for the last turn, it's these tyre marks. I hope you can see here. In these light settings, they're crystal clear. For me, I can see them every single lap, no problem at all. And I do always look out for tyre markings. That's what I like to use. Other than that, I can't really spot anything to use personally. So it may just be a timing thing if the weather changes or if you can't see these. But what we're going to do is we're going to be slamming the car down to third gear, and we're going to be braking, I'd say fairly gently, as you can see, less than 50%, and we're going to dive into the corner. What I'm aiming for at this point is to get my car very close to this pit wall entry. And if we just play it through, as you can see, trail braking, I'm just adapting to what I can see at this point. If I can see my car understeering wide, I know that I'm going to need to brake more to try and get more weight on the front. Basically I'm carrying too much speed. I need to hold onto the brakes more. If I'm turning too much, I lift off the brakes and begin to apply the power. It's that simple. But ideally for me, I want to be very close to this, and just before I get close to this is when I want to get on the power. And if we just watch it through, that is somehow what I managed to do. Fantastic. I do clip the curb on the inside, which I'd say is not the worst thing in the world. It's not ideal, but it does help your car with rotation. So if you're scared about understeering wide onto this green stuff and getting a 1X, then that's going to help you there. But it does potentially mess up your traction. So you're not going to get as good a run across the start-finish line. So if we just watch this back, braking at the tyre marks, braking fairly gently, aiming for this pit wall, and then just getting on the power just before we get close to it. Be careful not to use that green stuff on exit as well. And then it's just a straight shot towards the start-finish line. And we cross with a time of 2:15.592.